Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about why you shouldn't be gambling on zero DTEs or very short term option contracts. But one way to address this is through some math to kind of show you. So let's say I have portfolio A and portfolio B. And if I gave you a metric that said average yearly return, like this. So what did each portfolio do? Well, they each did 10%. Okay? Now, which one is better? Well, if you said they're both the same, or you think they're both the same, you're wrong. And let's see why that is. Well, let's do year. Let's see it's over 10 years, just as an example. We have portfolio, I'll just do A, and then we'll do B like this, and we'll do it as 100,000. So these are the portfolio sizes. And the next thing we want to do is we want to do the yearly return. So every year we did 10%. Wow, what a great portfolio, right? Okay, so that's portfolio A. And so you can see if I took the average here, guess what it is? 10%. Wow, that's so crazy. All right, so portfolio B. Well, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that portfolio B can still have a 10% average yearly return, but still lose, right? So one way to do this, I'm going to cap the downside, 0.10 and minus 0.5 times 0.6. Okay. Good. And then I'll just take the difference. And then average 10%. So each portfolio has an average yearly return. This is the, see, I could change the return cycle, right? But it's always 10%. Now, if I do, I guess that works. That. Okay. Here we go. So we could see that portfolio A ends up at 259,000. Portfolio B ends up at 216,000. But they still average 10% per year. But you would think that if you just looked at that they have the same path, right? But they have different paths. And one way to express this is through the compound annual growth rate, or like the geometric return. And geometric return is the ending divided by the start, and then raised 1 over how many years? Minus 1, so 10%. So we're compounding 10% every year. Well, what do you think this one is? Well, you don't know, because it's path dependent, right? So if I do this, now it's 8%, right? So every time I make a change, it's going to move. So we only compounded 8% per year, but this one compounded 10% per year, right? And the reason is it comes from the losses, right? The losses are what drive the returns, the compounding path of a portfolio. So if you do vol drag, it's just these two. So there's a 1% vol drag on this portfolio, hit it again. Now there's a 2%. One way you could calculate that is like RP. I think you divide by 2. Yeah, that's another way you could do it. Um, so you could see like, oh, 31%. Fantastic. 10%, 31%, 12%, down 6%, up 34, up 25, and then we had a series of down losses. We still did 10% per year, but we returned less money, right? And this is incredibly important for like if you're gambling on zero DTEs. Um, so the consistency there and the volatility of those instruments are most likely going to give you drawdowns, right? And it's common sense that if you have a few drawdowns, you need larger and larger upswings for you to make money. And one consequence here is if you did something like, let's do 5%, and then mean 1%, and then 10, and then we'll do that. There we go. I'm trying to show you here in some math. And then normal distribution of x, mean, standard deviation, no cumulative. All right, this should give me a graph. There we go. Delete. Oop. There we go. So it's like a nice little normal distribution, right? Well, what you're trying to do is you're trying to limit the left side of the distribution. Now, markets aren't normally distributed, right? They're power laws, and I can go into that in one particular video at some point. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to reduce the probability of this happening. Now, 3% is probably fine, right? You're going to have some type of acceptance of a drawdown, right? But not a drawdown, a loss, a permanent loss. And you're trying to limit these permanent losses, because these permanent losses are the ones that stop the compounding growth path, right? And what's interesting about this is that for like the particular tail strategy, right now it's probably kind of useful because of where interest rates are. So we could see like, we'll take an example of like a brokerage that will pay you interest on the deposit in some vehicle. Like I think Robinhood is 3.75 right now, if I remember. So if you have 100 grand in there, well, you're instantly going to make, well, 0.0375. I mean, I could have done that in my head. But here we go. $3,750. And effectively, just sitting in this sweep vehicle, well, you're already doing 3.75 over here, right? If I just did 3.75, it's rounding. There we go. And over here would be the same thing, right? We do 0.375. I think this will work. 1. I'm not sure why that didn't come out right, but you get the idea. And so this tail strategy idea is the treasuries already cut off the downside because you're just assuming you're going to get paid every year, right? Now, if you're going to get $3,750, you could spend that on tail trades. Now, you can't tail trades as in like you're trying to capture the right side of the distribution. You cut off the left side, now you're trying to cut off the right side. But in order to do that, you need time. And you need time in the market, and you need those options to be underpriced. And they need to be underpriced correctly, right? This doesn't mean that you could just go out and start buying all sorts of out of the money, very out of the money calls, right? You have to know what you're doing here. But I'm trying to give you an example. And what you do is those particular instruments, and maybe I could pull up a MOA on this, see if we can get some examples. Maybe I'll do Reddit or something. Go to Reddit. And I think Reddit popped up, but it was on the lower end, or excuse me, the extreme end of buying a contract. Yeah, it is. It's on the very, 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 very extreme end. 154, 410, 410 divided by 154. Yeah, it's like at the very extremes, right? And the idea here is that you're going to spend 1% premium on the contract. And so that was what, $400. So one trade is $400, right? And so you're spending your interest to capture tail. So you can never permanently destroy your principal. And this is demonstrated on some of the back tests. So you could see the compound annual growth rate is 75%. Now, I just demonstrated the compound annual growth rate, right? It's path dependent. It's not an average, it's a compound. And you could see 1 year, which was 2022, it did poorly, that's not good, right? You're destroying your compounding path, but I don't want to, this model's probably overfit already, and I don't want to overfit it more. But the idea here is that you take on trades that you see $1.27 here, and it bought the 150, so that's about 1%, somewhere in there. And delta at entry was a 10 delta, and you're trying to capture the tail of the distribution. You see, at one point it was up 33,000%, but you don't cut off the return profile because the stock market is a power law. It's not a normal distribution, which means your next biggest trade is yet to come. And you could see that, like, they just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, you're scaling into it, of course, right? And some of these, you're probably not going to buy 500 of these 254s because the market's probably really thin right there, right? But it did pick up Micron in this strategy. But your percentage return profiles are just capturing tails. And the idea here is you're going to put on many of them, right? And here it depends on, how much it's going to cost you. But typically it's around 250 to, you're going to get like 15. And that actually kind of coincides with how many trades you typically get on average, on average per year. But they tend to show up in volatility environments. When you get a lot of volatility, you can see there's some not taper tantrum, oh my gosh. The tariff tantrum, right? Then we had COVID. And so they tend to show up in like really large volatility environments. And that's where you pick them up. And this one actually scales. When you get volatility, your initial size is 3x. And so you're sitting in cash. And so the current position is 1.6 million because it's a $200 million portfolio right now over 13 years, right? And you could see the win rate is 28%. Well, these are 10 deltas. Look, well, averaging 11%, but the probability of winning is 28%. And that means the volatility is mispriced, and because the volatility is mispriced, it shows up as growth, right? It shows up in your portfolio. So it's very important to cut off the possibility of the left tail. And there are certain strategies where, because I have this one would be a very large portfolio, right? Well, for a personal account. Uh, there are strategies where you could do butterflies, but I haven't found them to be entirely lucrative. I think, can the website do this? Short, short. Uh, and what you're trying to do is, you see this distribution here? Well, if the market is normally distributed, which we don't, but let's just say it's a normally distributed profile, well, what, 64% or so of the results will be within one standard deviation, right? So that's 5% plus or minus. But that's not, you don't make money there. You make money over here or over here if you're buying puts, right? But we're just capturing upside tail. That's what we're doing. And so if you take this kind of profile of a distribution and you construct a butterfly, this one's going to be a little bit aggressive. So I'll just say maybe 180. So I'm going to buy one of these. I'm going to buy two of those. I'll just make sure that the 200s are there. And then we sold those, we bought one, and then now, oops, now I need the downside. So let's say it's 25 points, so 125, buy that. And then I bought the 200, which is 20 more, let's say 105, is that right? Did I get it right, guys? Yeah, it's okay. That's enough to demonstrate what I'm talking about. And then 2. So you could see that you see this convexity here in the profile, right? This is today, and then the dotted line is at expiration. Well, the idea here is that you're inverting the distribution, where it says, hey, I don't want to make any money in here, but I want to make a lot of money over here. So what you're doing is you're selling the straddle, and you probably want 2 of those, right? And then I'm doing so it's a 2-1 minus 2, 1, 2. That's what this is. It's a complex structure. Now with this one, you could see the max loss is 5,761. That's much higher than, this outright strategy I'm doing here, but it's a smaller portfolio, right? So you could imagine if I had 200 million, well, now I have 7.5 million to dispose of in my contracts. And we know that you get, what was it, an average of 1 to 2 a month, 1.5 or something? So $5 million. $5 million. Did you hear me there? Let's say it's 2. So $312,000 per trade. Now, you're probably not going to get filled like that on a lot of these wings. But hey, let's just go through it. So this strategy, because it costs more relative to your portfolio, probably does better. I don't know, I haven't tested it, when you have a very large portfolio. And the idea here is that you're trying to capture the wing to the upside or the wing to the downside. And anything in between you don't care about, because nobody makes money when it's in the middle. You make money when the tails show up. And so that's the idea. Now, this type of structure here is not going to give you the return profile that is typical of a smaller portfolio. Why? Because you're capping, with this structure here, you're capping this convexity to a degree. So you could see, if I think about that, what was it, the 410s or something? Well, this says, well, that'd be today, right? Let's just say it went to 500, just so we have some convexity in there. So this one says 27,183. But you could see I'm buying one of the 180s and 2 of the 200s, right? and those deltas were fairly large, right? That's a 55 delta, 200's a 48 delta. So they're really not wingy, right? They're not really wingy. And the problem here with this kind of strategy is that when you're trying to do an equidistant butterfly, you can't really buy this 420 because that would put this negative, so it wouldn't be equidistant, right? And so like there's some structure issues here when you're dealing with this type of stuff. But the idea here is that if you nabbed one of these, what's 410? If it goes to 500, you make 5,800%, right? And you're only buying one. And so you're only putting up $420, right? And so technically this is your downside, but it's being funded by just interest payments. And so as interest payments go higher, well, then you could just, you have more money to buy tails. But then all of your left side is chopped off. And what that does is it creates this profile where you're limiting volatility drag. Your volatility drag would be zero, essentially. It's zero. So the compounding path, and you just keep refreshing this, this portfolio on the right, can you hear that music outside? Someone's playing some like crazy music. Okay, so you can see here, like it never breaches the left side, 259, right? It never does it. It's because of the volatility drag on the portfolio, right? Oh, look at that. Look at this. Down 17, down 19, 33, down, 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 up 129%, but you would still have to gain, oops, it's gone. Well, what was that? 100%? I don't know what that was. You still had to go up like 80% or something to like reach the portfolio on the left, right? So it's very important to understand that big losses on the portfolio destroy compounding. And so I hope that helps you to make better decisions and to make sure that you have downside protection on your portfolio at all times, because it's going to destroy you, especially if you're gambling. Thanks.